My brothers and sisters in Christ, in today's gospel we hear the famous parable of the Good Samaritan, one that is very popular and very rich and deep in meaning, but I fear that sometimes we rob some of the central meaning from the parable by jumping to its conclusions without looking at its source. Many often just look, at the sense that we are called to be neighbor to one another, that we're called to do good for one another, and we conclude that that's what the parable is all about. And that's true to a point. In fact, that is a proper conclusion. But if that alone is all we get from it, then in effect, it's an ineffectual parable. What's often lost on us when we read it, and what the church fathers were quick to point out, is that the parable of the Good Samaritan is ultimately about Christ himself. We have a part in that story, and our part is not the Good Samaritan. In fact, we are the nearly dead man. The Good Samaritan in the parable is Christ himself. We, on the way down from Jerusalem to Jericho, on a path that was very treacherous and seen as a steep descent, allegorically, the church fathers saw this as the fall from original justice and grace of Adam and Eve fallen in original sin, expelled from the garden. They see this as the condition of sinful man, dead in his sins. And so the man beaten by robbers is lying there, left to die, left to suffer, and the Good Samaritan comes along and takes him up on his animal and takes him to the inn that is the church, and leaves everything needed to care for him. Now, the church fathers would go on, they saw symbolism in every number, every symbol of the story, which is more than I want to unpack in this reflection today. But the key is that Christ himself is the Good Samaritan who takes up the man and takes him to the inn and says, "Here, I've left you everything you need to care for him before I return again. I will come again." Of course, an immediate tie-in to his second coming. But what we need to take away from this is the humility to realize that we are the man beaten and left for dead. When we realize this is the starting point, that I am wretched and have been left with nothing, and everyone has looked down on me, and God in his infinite mercy has taken me up and cared for my needs and brought me to healing and restored me to life in the church. Then, when at the end Jesus says, "Go and do likewise," I am charged not just to do good needs, not just to be neighbor to someone else, but to love as Christ has loved. When I realized that I was the one wounded and left for dead, and Christ cared for me, how does that change my disposition towards my brother or sister in the worst of plights that I see? How does that change the way I look towards the homeless person on the corner? How does that change my disposition towards that family member in need? When I, who is left in my own sins to die, and Jesus loved me enough to take me up and care for me, and now he says, "Go and do likewise," that is a radical charge of love. And only if I am first in realization of how much mercy has done for me, can I go forth and do likewise. If I don't comprehend what's been done for me, then likewise has no meaning. This isn't a story about just doing good deeds. This is a story about a radical transformation of heart. May God bless you.